Hello, I am Glenn Ingersoll. This is Oziana, 1982. It contains a rather long short story called The Cowardly Lion and the Courage Pills. So let's get started and see how we go. The Cowardly Lion sat contentedly in the gardens of the Emerald Palace of Oz, smelling the beautiful roses and humming tunelessly to himself. A slight buzzing startled him out of a daydream, but when he looked up, he was relieved to see it was just a pretty little honeybee going about her daily work. He smiled and watched her bustling about her business without even giving a second glance to the huge beast that stood near. "Hello," rumbled the Cowardly Lion good-naturedly. The bee seemed to notice the lion for the first time. She smiled, waved, then disappeared into the bush. The Cowardly Lion looked about him and drew in a deep, long breath of fragrant air. The air smelled especially good in the gardens because it wafted through the fragrant flowers and perfumed fountains, which sprinkled their water gently over green marble basins and statuettes. The Cowardly Lion was sitting on an area of soft green lawn next to a delightful little gazebo. It sparkled with emeralds which had been set into pure gold roses. A line of these flowers spelled out the words, "Rose Gardens." The day was warm, the sun beat down in a gently relaxing sort of way that lowered the eyelids and soothed the muscles. The Cowardly Lion was soon fast asleep. He was snoring softly when the Wogglebug, a highly magnified and thoroughly educated fellow, rushed down the garden path. He was on his way to the palace, and since he didn't like using any more time than necessary at any given task, he was going along at quite a pace. Since he was walking quickly and not really paying any attention to where he was stepping, he didn't see the Cowardly Lion stretched out asleep until he had tripped over him. So we have an illustration of the tripping over the Cowardly Lion. Waking up suddenly from a very relaxing nap and finding someone lying across you was quite a surprising experience. The Cowardly Lion was totally unprepared for this sort of happening, and being the Cowardly Lion, he reacted very rapidly to the situation. With a loud screech of terror, the lion leaped to his feet. Bounding this way and that in blind panic, the Cowardly Lion found all means of escape barred by this strange new creature, so not knowing what else to do, he hid his head under the little gazebo. It shook with his tremblings and fear. A few of the golden roses dropped from their settings. One landed with a plop on the lion's back, which made him tremble all the more. The Wogglebug got up from where he had fallen and looked at the huge shaking beast. He said, shaking his head, "Such a coward." He walked up to the Cowardly Lion's tail and carefully pulled him out from beneath the gazebo. The Cowardly Lion had his forepaws over his eyes and was shaking so hard that he didn't realize what was happening to him. "Now, what's the matter with you?" asked the Wogglebug in a rather scolding tone. "Oh," the Cowardly Lion lifted his paws off his eyes and looked up. For the first time, he realized he was no longer under the cover of the gazebo. This frightened the Cowardly Lion to almost a faint. "It is I, the Wogglebug," said the highly magnified insect pompously. "Woggletug?" moaned the lion. "I'm being attacked by a Woggletug, oh!" "Not a Woggletug, you imbecile," shouted the bug. "A Wogglebug, a Wogglebug. The only Wogglebug I know is a professor at a college, and he doesn't sneak up and pounce upon poor, innocent, unsuspecting, kind, friendly lions like me," he whimpered. "I hadn't the faintest notion you were lying there. I would have stepped more cautiously," admitted the Wogglebug. "As it happened, I didn't know you were so rudely occupying the pathway, so unfortunately I tripped over your very large self." "It is you," said the Cowardly Lion gratefully. He had been watching this unusual personage from between his claws and was now sure he was who he said he was. "This is what I have been explaining." The Wogglebug dusted off his jacket with a small brush. Miniature dust clouds formed about his jacket before drifting slowly to the ground. The Cowardly Lion shook off the dirt that clung to his own coat, and he too was soon back to normal. "Well, I'm happy to observe you have regained your composure," approved the Wogglebug. "Thank you," said the Cowardly Lion, though he wasn't sure he knew what had been said. "Follow my lead, enormous feline, and we shall study your affliction at a much greater length." The Cowardly Lion had understood very little of the Wogglebug's speech, so he sat where he was, bewildered at what to do next. "Come along." "All right." The Cowardly Lion stood, and the two were soon walking side by side through the roses. "I know of your famed cowardice," said the Wogglebug, "but I've never known you to flee from anyone or anything before." "I've always been cowardly, but never so cowardly as I am now. Why, I'm even afraid of my own shadow. The tiniest little sound jangles my nerves, and any unexpected appearances, like yours, for instance, frighten me almost to the point of heart failure." Then this is very serious." The Wogglebug rubbed his chin thoughtfully. "Your dilemma has provided me with just the challenge I've been looking for." "Challenge? What do you mean?" "I often have leisure time away from the busy work of my college, and I enjoy making optimum use of this time to increase my brain's prowess." "Oh," said the Cowardly Lion. "When I met you moments ago by the gazebo, I was on my way to our esteemed wizard, hoping that he might have some worthy conundrum for my exceptional intelligence. However, I do not think I shall need his services on this occasion, as I have quite effectively discovered a puzzle myself." "And what's that?" asked the Cowardly Lion, hesitating. "That, my dear lion, is you." He pointed one of his long, slender fingers at the lion. "Me?" The Cowardly Lion began to tremble with uncertainty and fright at what this might mean. "Why me? I don't understand." He began to back away from the bug. "This is precisely what I intend to remedy. You are entirely too frightened of everything, so I decided to cure you of your cowardice." "Cure me? You're going to stop me from being scared? Can you do that?" asked the Cowardly Lion. "Are you sure? The wizard tried once, but it didn't work for very long before I was terrified again." "That fact has not escaped my attention, but in spite of the difficulties, I will persevere." He stamped his foot with determination. "Never fear, friend lion. You will soon be strutting into the most terrifying places without a second thought. You will soon be able to march proudly through the most frightening situations without a quiver. Soon, not even the most powerful phantasm will quell your spirits. Would you like that?" "Like it? I'd love it." The Cowardly Lion bared his teeth and unsheathed his claws at just the thought. He scanned the gardens in search of unseen opponents. Then, without warning, he let a loud roar, which made the flowers bow down and the Wogglebug step back. Unfortunately, the effects of the roar struck the roarer much worse. With a pitiful squeal of terror, he sprang 10 feet in the air. He landed on his feet and looked for some nearby hiding place. The only hiding place he could find was a big rose bush, and he didn't consider the consequences of hiding there more than a moment before he was crouched beneath it. Contributing to the poor creature's fear was the constant pricking he received from the thorns. The Wogglebug sighed at this display, then went to help his friend. 2 roses from the other side of the path watched the 2 Ozites. These roses were not ordinary roses, for nestled within their petals were eyes. The stems that were attached to these strange flowers were not attached to the bush, but instead led down to a small brown lump, which at first glance looked very much like a patch of dirt, but upon closer examination was actually the thing's body. While the Wogglebug and the Cowardly Lion were preoccupied, the thing stood on its long, spindly legs, which looked like those of a spider. It crawled away, muttering, "I must get out of here before I get crushed." And here is an illustration of the creature. The Wogglebug had succeeded in convincing the Cowardly Lion that there was nothing to be afraid of. He crawled sheepishly out from underneath the bush. "I see we must put you somewhere where you won't be frightened of anything." The Wogglebug folded his arms and closed his eyes and thought. The lion began to get restless and uneasy when the Wogglebug stood this way for 5 minutes without moving. "Ah, I have it!" exclaimed the bug. The Cowardly Lion was startled by the Wogglebug's sudden outburst. He was so startled, in fact, that he almost hid under the rose bush again. "I will take you to the palace," said the Wogglebug in a calm, friendly tone. The calmness in the bug's voice soothed the Cowardly Lion. He agreed to go with the Wogglebug to the Emerald Palace. "I'm usually afraid to go to the palace," he exclaimed, "because I'm afraid of whom I might meet there." "Don't worry," the Wogglebug assured him. "I'll be with you, so you needn't be afraid." "Thank you," said the Cowardly Lion, stepping closer to the professor. It wasn't far to the palace from the rose garden, and the two ran into no more trouble on the way. So it wasn't long before they were walking up the steps. They went in a side entrance to save the lion any further unnecessary frights. Upon entering the palace, they were met by a pretty little maid in green. "Ah, jelly jam," said the Wogglebug happily. "Just the girl I was looking for." "Yes, Professor?" She curtsied to him and winked at the Cowardly Lion. "What may I do for you?" "You may find a quiet room for my friend here where there will be nothing to frighten him. I must leave you now on business. Take good care of him." The Wogglebug waved goodbye as he rushed down a palace corridor. "Where would you like to go?" asked Jellia. "Somewhere quiet, I guess," said the Cowardly Lion. "Certainly," she said brightly. "I know just the place. Come with me." She turned down one of the halls and beckoned the lion to follow. She led him down one hallway after another. She would lead him right, then left, then right, then change direction and turn left, then right, then left, until the Cowardly Lion felt thoroughly lost. "I never knew the palace was so expensive," said the lion. Jelly Jam didn't reply to this statement, but continued to lead him one way and another until the lion was not only lost, but dizzy. "Here we are," she said. She stopped so suddenly the Cowardly Lion had to move quickly to keep from running into her. Jelly had stopped directly in front of a very large door. It was easily twice the size of any door in the palace, and Jelly had to stand on the lion's back just to reach the doorknob. She drew a big key ring out of the pocket of her apron and inserted the largest of the keys into the lock. It turned, but only after Jelly had banged the lock a couple of times with her fist. Once unlocked, the door swung silently open on its own accord. "There," she said, waving her hand expansively at the room beyond the door. As the entrance had been, the room and everything in it was very large. The bed was twice the size of any bed the Cowardly Lion had ever seen, and he found was the perfect size for his immense body. The carpet was thick and plush, and rose up around his legs like jungle grasses. The large picture windows flooded the room with bright, comforting sunlight. With no fear in his mind, but with a considerable amount of awe, the Cowardly Lion entered the room. Jellia let the door close quietly behind him, and then she stole softly away down the hall. The Cowardly Lion explored the room carefully. It seemed to him much like any other room in the Emerald Palace, only bigger. It had a bath, and he discovered that he could turn on the water easily, even though he had no paws and no hands. There was a table and chairs, which he didn't pay much attention to because he had no intention of using them. Everything was a different shade of green, except some paintings on the walls and some small jeweled decorations tastefully placed about the main room. The paintings intrigued the lion, especially one of a familiar jungle scene. The appearance of such a familiar and pleasant image in such an unfamiliar place helped put the lion more at ease. This room must have been built for some giant guests, he thought, and since I have nothing better to do, and I am a little tired, at this point the Cowardly Lion yawned widely, I might as well get some sleep. He ambled over to the bed, hopped onto it, and was soon fast asleep. In the wizard's apartment, 3 figures were poring over magic books. Herbie, the medicine man, stirred uncomfortably in his seat. Herbie had been discovered in a bottle in a witch's hut. When he was released from the enchantment, he had discovered, to his joy, that all his wonderful remedies were stored in his hollow chest, which was now shaped like a medicine cabinet. Are you sure this cowardice remedy isn't for the Cowardly Lion? Said Herbie, looking up from his book. He's incurable, you know. The Wogglebug looked up from Cures for Animal Maladies and said, My dear sir, would I lead you on a wild goose chase? I'm not sure, replied Herbie. You might. You haven't assured me that we're not trying to find a cure for the Cowardly Lion. I know you said this was for one of your students, but if that's true, why are you reading a book on animal cures? I am not, protested the Wogglebug. Then what do you call that? Asked Herbie, pointing at the book that lay open on the table before the bug. The Wogglebug looked down at the book as if he were seeing it for the first time. Oh, this, he said, picking it up. This book on animal cures, well, we don't want it then, do we? He tossed the book carelessly over his shoulder and reached for another off the pile in the middle of the table. Herbie seemed satisfied and went back to reading his book. The wizard had a smile with courage and its uses in magic. As the Wogglebug picked up, lions are a beast's best king. And here's a illustration showing the research being done for the Cowardly Lion's courage pills, or whatever will come. Do you have an Ozma? Asked the guardian of the gates, looking up from his hand of cards. Ozfish, said the soldier with the green whiskers happily. The guardian grumbled good-naturedly and pulled the top card off the deck. Do you have a... started the soldier. No, wait, shouted his friend joyfully. I got the Ozma I was looking for. Now I get to go again. Oh, very well, agreed the soldier. Do you have a Nick Chopper? What? Said the soldier, sitting up in surprise. That was what I was going to ask for. How did you know? Just a lucky guess, said the guardian, taking the 2 Nick Chopper cards and putting them into his hand. Do you have a Dorothy? No, I don't, said the soldier. Oz fish. What are they doing? Said a small, squeaky voice. I don't know, said another voice. But whatever it is, they are having fun doing it. So they must be stopped. Unknown to either the soldier with the green whiskers or the guardian of the gates, 4 red and white roses walked into the gatehouse. Ho, 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 chuckled the soldier. Now I've got you. I've got 3 sets on the table, and you have none. Your Nick Choppers, please. The guardian sighed in mock disappointment and pulled the Nick Choppers from his hand. He was handing them over to the soldier when he noticed a strange orange smoke drifting up from beneath the table. He was about to yell, "Fire!" when an overpowering drowsiness washed over him. Ombi, he started to say his friend's name when he dropped to the floor, sleeping soundly. We have conquered the gates of the city, said the second squeaky voice. Soon the Blorgans will have conquered the most powerful fairy country in all the world. Soon all Oz will bow before us. And here are our card-playing friends. Unconscious. If any of the Oz folk had heard this speech coming from this small creature, who was about 2 feet tall and looked like nothing more than 2 roses, one red and one white, growing out a large brown clod of dirt out of which protruded 6 spindly legs, they would not have believed it. These 2 little creatures looked no more threatening than a couple of puppy dogs. The most terrifying thing about the 2 was the fact that they had downed 2 of the Emerald City's most popular guardians with almost no effort. Are you sure we can do it, Fraggle? Said the first Blorgan. Of course, said Fraggle confidently. These Oz folks are a simple lot and easily conquerable. It's a wonder no one has done it before. Yes, we've been sleeping beneath Mount Phanphasm so long we really don't know what's been going on in all the fairy countries around us, said the first. Yes, Brabble, but we will soon know. It won't be long until the world revolves around us. Us. Are you sure Queen Lurline and her goody-goody fairy band will let us do it? Asked Brabble. Don't worry about them. Once we have Ozma in our power, they won't dare stand against us, and the fairy that imprisoned us was banished to the great outside world, from what I hear, that is. I'm still not sure about this whole thing, said Brabble, shaking his rose eyes back and forth. But you will be sure when the rest of our conquering army comes in on their flying plants. They should be here by nightfall, and then the fall of Oz shall begin. When the Cowardly Lion awoke from his nap, the sun was slipping quietly down the horizon. He yawned and rubbed his eyes with his paws to clear them of sleep. He blinked and looked around the room. The shadows of the evening were creeping across the floor. Impenetrable darkness clung to the corners of the room. He shivered slightly in apprehension at what these pockets of shadow might hide. These ominous thoughts led him into the thinking of what evil creatures might be waiting in those corners to pounce on him when he went back to sleep. I won't let them get me, thought the Cowardly Lion. He heard a loud clattering sound which made him shiver to the bone and began backing up toward the head of the bed. It was terribly close, and he glanced around cautiously at the corners of the room. But nowhere could he see anything especially menacing. He licked his lips nervously. At least he tried to lick his lips. But as he passed his tongue through his jaws, the clattering stopped and his teeth sank into his tongue. Ow! Moaned the Cowardly Lion, hiding his head under the bed sheets. I've been frightened by my own teeth chattering. It's useless. I'd even be frightened by my own shadow at noon, when there isn't any shadow. Knock, knock, knock. The lion looked up from the blankets when he heard the sound. At first he wasn't alarmed, as he thought it was only his knees knocking together. Knock, knock, knock. When the sound came the second time, the lion was watching his knees. They weren't knocking together. "Hey, let me in, will you hurry up?" shouted a voice through the door. "Someone's coming to get me," thought the Cowardly Lion, and dived under the bed covers. "Are you in there, or aren't you?" The voice sounded familiar to the lion, even with his head buried beneath a pile of blankets. The cries became more adamant, and the knocks louder as the creature pounded on the door. "Knock! Knock! Knock!" "Is this the thanks I get for making you courage pills? I know you're in there. Come here, let me in. It's me, the Wogglebug." "How do I know it is he?" thought the Cowardly Lion, jumping down from the bed. "Maybe it's just someone playing a trick on me. No, I won't open the door." He turned back to the bed and was about to lean back onto it when he heard, "If you don't let me in right now, you will never be courageous. You will always be the poor, simpering, foolish coward you are right now. I'm leaving." "No, wait!" shouted the Cowardly Lion. He bounded over to the door and, standing on his hind legs, was able to reach the doorknob with his forepaws and open it. The door swung open to reveal a very large and very irate bug. He glowered angrily at the Cowardly Lion. "Is this the thanks I get for slaving all afternoon and most of the evening, trying to cure you of your perpetual fright?" This wasn't entirely true, since the Wogglebug had been helped quite a bit by the wonderful wizard and Herbie the medicine man in devising the bottle of pills he held in his hands. The Cowardly Lion was doubly ashamed of the fear he had exhibited in not opening the door right away, and for all the trouble he had caused the Wogglebug who was attempting to cure him. "I'm sorry," he said. "I'm such a coward." With this short speech, he let out a deep lion-sized sob, and a tear rolled down his cheek. This softened the Wogglebug, and he quickly forgave the lion for the delay. "I've done it," he said proudly, holding up the bottle of pills where the lion could easily see it. "I have created this bottle of courage pills after much intellectual sweat and toil, and now I proudly and generously present them to you, my dear friend, to cure you of your curse." With a flourish of his hands, the Wogglebug presented the bottle to the Cowardly Lion. This impassioned speech caused another tear to course down the Cowardly Lion's cheek. "Thank you, Wogglebug. I'll never forget this." And there he is being presented with the courage pills. The Cowardly Lion leaned over and enveloped the Wogglebug in a big lion hug. "Now, none of that," spluttered the Wogglebug. The Cowardly Lion let him go. "Now, let's not have any more of that stuff. Here." He plunged his hand into his large pocket and drew from it an emerald green ribbon. He threaded the ribbon through the handle of the pill bottle. "Hold still," he said. He stretched his arms around the lion's neck and tied the ribbon securely. "It has a lion open cap," explained the Wogglebug. "Just take hold of the bottle with your paws and pull the lid off with your teeth." "I see," said the Cowardly Lion. "Why don't you try one now?" suggested the Wogglebug eagerly. "Oh, no, I couldn't," said the Cowardly Lion, looking down at the bottle affectionately. "It would be a waste, After all the work you put into this, I couldn't waste a precious pill on a frivolous moment. If you don't use them, you won't be sure they will. Woo. The Wogglebug stopped himself before he could say they might not work. He didn't want the Cowardly Lion's faith in him to be shaken. That is, I would like you to see the effects of my handiwork. No, I think it would be better if I saved them for an emergency. I wouldn't want to waste them. They're too precious. I can always make more, coaxed the Wogglebug. But suppose I have finished them all, and you are in the midst of making more when something terrible happens. Then where would we be? The Cowardly Lion reasoned. What if you lose them? Asked the Wogglebug in a final attempt to get the Cowardly Lion to take a pill. Yes, I'm very much afraid of that happening, said the lion unhappily, but that is a fear I must live with. Very gallant of you, muttered the Wogglebug. He leaned against the wall. With these new remedies, I know I shall never be cowardly again, said the Cowardly Lion proudly. You can call me the Courageous Lion from now on. Yes, said the Wogglebug, turning away from the lion to hide the consternation on his face. What will happen if they don't work, thought the Wogglebug. He consoled himself with the thought that they would give the lion confidence, if not courage, and that there was nothing in the Emerald City to terrify anyone. So he won't have to use them for any dire emergency, the Wogglebug concluded thoughtfully to himself. Now that nothing will frighten me, we may as well leave this room and go to the banquet hall for the evening meal. I haven't been brave enough to eat in there for weeks, he confided, and it's all thanks to you that I now can. The Wogglebug had by this time banished any thought of the fallibility of the pills to the back of his mind, so he readily agreed to the Cowardly Lion's plan. We can take the shortcut through the garden, suggested the bug. He led the way out of the room and down the hallway outside. He took the opposite direction from when the Cowardly Lion had been brought by Jelly Jam. It was only a few steps to the end of the hall. The Cowardly Lion was about to ask the bug how he had found the room when the Wogglebug pushed open a door in the wall that led directly into the garden. The lion hadn't seen the door until the Wogglebug pushed it open, even though he'd been standing right in front of it. He stepped out and then he watched the door swing shut. Only a tiny crack revealed that it had been there at all. The lion considered asking the Wogglebug how he had known about the door, but he decided against it to avoid long explanations. Maybe I'll ask him after dinner, he thought. The Wogglebug led the way down the garden path, but the Cowardly Lion was continually bumping into him and wishing they were going faster. Couldn't you go any faster? Asked the Cowardly Lion impatiently. I want to tell Dorothy what you did for me. Darkness was falling very quickly, and the lion knew that dinner in the palace started just before dark. He didn't want to miss any more of it than he had to. The Wogglebug's pace didn't seem to the lion to be getting any faster, so in desperation he scooped the bug up with his head and tossed him onto his back. Here now, what's the meaning of this? Protested the Wogglebug, grasping wildly at the lion's mane. You are going too slow, explained the Cowardly Lion. I can walk faster, so just direct me until we get to a more familiar part of the gardens. Oh, well, sputtered the bug. Which way do I go? Asked the lion, stopping at a branch in the path. The Wogglebug leaned over as far as he could without falling off the lion's back. He squinted at the two paths. What was this? There were no longer two paths, but now only one. The place where he thought a path had been was nothing more than a bed of red and white roses. Cowardly, I'm surprised at you. There is only one path. There is only one way to go. You should be able to see that for yourself. The Wogglebug heard a squeaky, derisive laugh at his scolding. Don't laugh at me, Lion. I was not fooled by... The Cowardly Lion interrupted. His voice quavered a little as he said, That wasn't me. It came from those roses. I don't see anyone, said the Wogglebug, scanning the roses intently. This is a poor joke, Lion. They again heard the derisive laughter. Get him! Commanded a voice among the roses. As one, the Blorgans, for of course these flowers were Blorgans, stood and rushed toward the great cat and his highly magnified rider. With a shriek of terror, the Cowardly Lion whirled about and dashed pell-mell to the grounds. The Wogglebug clung desperately to the frantic lion's mane, and it was all he could do to hang on. This joke has gone too far! Stop! The Wogglebug shouted. The Cowardly Lion was running so fast the wind whirled the Wogglebug's exclamation away before the lion could hear it. He probably wouldn't have stopped, even if he had heard the Wogglebug, because all around him red and white Blorgans rushed toward him. He looked up and saw dropping from the sky hordes of Blorgans clinging to huge flying vines. He dodged one that landed in front of him. The Blorgans by this time were no longer chasing the lion, but were releasing their strange orange smoke. The Cowardly Lion held his breath when he saw the smoke and doubled his speed. Stop! Shouted the Wogglebug. I'm sorry, I said it was a poor joke. Please stop! Whoa! The Wogglebug had inhaled the orange smoke and was slipping sleepily from his seat on the Cowardly Lion's back. The Cowardly Lion's lungs were bursting from holding his breath for such a long time. He staggered and felt dizzy. With a great loud gasp, he began breathing again. He heard a sound behind him and turned to see the Wogglebug stretched out under a sunflower that had turned in for the night. He began to think how wonderful it would be to stretch out there with him and go to sleep. He was so tired. His stomach sank to the ground. He accidentally bumped the bottle of pills with his nose, and the pills fell out. He looked at them dreamily, not quite knowing what they were. Through half-closed eyes, he saw the triumphant Blorgans walking toward him. Something about them reminded him of the delightful Oz banquets and parties. They looked like walking flower arrangements, he thought. The Cowardly Lion let his head drop onto his paws. His eyes closed, and he began to breathe deeply. He dreamt of Ozma and Dorothy sitting at the royal table and eating Oz cream and drinking Oz Aid. He dreamt of the little wizard performing magic for all the guests. He probably would have been dreaming like this forever if his nose hadn't settled on top of a courage pill. As he breathed, the pungent aroma of the pill poured into his nose. It tickled. The more he breathed, the more it tickled. He wiggled his nose up in an attempt to rid himself of the annoying tickling, but only jammed the pill up closer to his nostrils. The loud, unexpected sneeze startled the Blorgans that were trying to tie his legs, and very effectively woke the Cowardly Lion. All at once he remembered the danger the Emerald City and all his friends were in. Oh dear, thought the Cowardly Lion, won't somebody save us? He looked fearfully at the oncoming hordes of invading Blorgans. I wish I weren't so scared. If I weren't such a coward, I could beat them with 2 paws tied behind my back. Oh, if only I were braver. If only. The courage pills. He opened his fear-closed eyes, and there they were, right before his nose. It took a moment to scoop 3 up with his tongue and swallow. There was something wrong. The pills weren't working. He felt no more brave than before he had taken the pills. Oh, he moaned, the orange smoke didn't seem to be making him drowsy. So, if he hadn't been so cowardly, he could have fought off the evil little Blorgans easily. All of their strength lay in the orange smoke. He buried his head beneath his paws and moaned with terror. They didn't work, he thought. Oh, I wish the wizard were here with his magic. I wish He lifted his head and watched the wind swirl the orange smoke into pretty shapes. That's it, he shouted. He looked disdainfully at the Blorgans who were trying to overpower him by piling on top of him in great numbers. The Cowardly Lion shook them all off. The Blorgans fell helplessly to the ground. There's no way you can stop us from conquering all Oz, shouted one defiantly. Yes, there is, thought the Cowardly Lion as he dashed through the garden. Blorgans everywhere tried to stop him by throwing themselves in his path and emitting orange smoke. With grim determination, the Cowardly Lion ignored their best efforts, and in almost no time he had rounded a bend in the garden path and found himself in front of one of the palace's main entrances. The Cowardly Lion bounded up the palace steps and rushed in. Orange smoke hung heavily in the air, and Blorgans hurried along everywhere. For the first time since he had taken the pills, the Cowardly Lion felt drowsy. Oh no, he thought, they're wearing off. I must hurry. He ran as fast as he could down one corridor and into another. He passed servants and friends asleep in the halls, but he didn't slacken his pace. In his mad rush down the halls, he passed the banquet hall and saw all the guests asleep in their chairs. He was again feeling dizzy from the orange smoke, and every breath he took brought him nearer to collapse. Upon turning a corner, the Cowardly Lion bumped into a soft figure who was running in the opposite direction. The figure spun wildly and collided with a wall. The Cowardly Lion roared ferociously to keep the thing from coming nearer, but the thing, instead of running away, ran toward the Cowardly Lion with its arms outstretched. Cowie, oh Cowie, I'm so glad to see you! Before the lion could stop, the creature had wrapped its arms around his neck. Scarecrow? Asked the lion. Who else? These Blorgan Rose things have locked up Scraps and Jack Pumpkinhead and the Sawhorse and the rest in a room. I was the only one who escaped. Why aren't you asleep like all the other meat people and animals? It's a long story. Hop on my back. I've got a plan. When the Scarecrow was safely settled on the Cowardly Lion's back, the Cowardly Lion dashed off down the hall. Where are we going? Asked the Scarecrow. The Cowardly Lion didn't answer. He ran through the doorways, hallways, and corridors before finally stopping short before a beautiful door inlaid with emeralds, rubies, topazes, amethysts, and sapphire jewels. This is Ozma's room, said the Scarecrow in surprise. Open it, roared the lion. He roared and shook his head to keep from falling asleep. The shake dislodged the Scarecrow, who fell in front of the door to the Girl Queen's suite. Are you sure? He said, looking reproachfully at the exhausted beast. Yes, roared the lion. Open it. All right, you don't have to shout, Cowie. The Scarecrow grasped the doorknob with his padded fist. The door was not locked, so he was able to push it all the way open. When the door opened, the Cowardly Lion rushed in and slammed the door shut behind them. More of those rose things are coming. Have to hurry. The lion grasped the Scarecrow's shoulder in his mouth and dashed to the door of the magic room. Now open it, he roared, putting the Scarecrow down before it. It's probably locked. We will never, he began, but there, lying quietly next to the door, was the little wizard himself. Wizard, he knelt by the little man and shook him as hard as he could, which wasn't very hard, because the Scarecrow's straw-stuffed body was not very strong. Open the door, said the Cowardly Lion drowsily. But we can't get in without the magic key, said the Scarecrow, reaching up to grasp the door handle. The wizard had unlocked the door before the orange smoke put him to sleep, so the door handle did turn. The Scarecrow hadn't expected it to do this, so he lost his balance and tumbled to the floor. "Who would have thought?" he said. A deep rumble came from the mouth of the Cowardly Lion. "Oh no, he's gone to sleep, and I don't know what he wanted from the magic room." The Scarecrow hopped to his feet and ran to the Cowardly Lion's side. He whacked the lion across his face with all his might. The Cowardly Lion stirred and tried to open his eyes. "What will I do? It's all my fault. I should have asked him what he wanted immediately." The Scarecrow leaned anxiously over his friend's face. The straw rubbed against the lion's nose. Once again, the Cowardly Lion had been saved by a sneeze. "Huh? Oh, the magic fan! Scarecrow! Where are you?" he cried, looking everywhere around him. "Here I am," said a weak voice from the opposite side of the room. "Your sneeze swept me off my feet." "Come over here. I'm too big to fit in the magic room. You have to get in and get the magic fan." The Cowardly Lion looked at the door to Ozma's suite. He thought he could hear the voices of the Blorgans on the other side. "Hurry!" The Scarecrow stood and by hanging onto the furniture managed to cross the floor and enter the magic room. "Here it is," he said, exiting moments later. "The very fan given to me by my family tree. The very beanstalk in which Dorothy first found me." He hugged the object fondly. "See, Cowie?" And there is the Scarecrow with the magic fan. "Fan away the orange smoke," said the Cowardly Lion. His head dropped to the carpet, and he snored lightly. "What a wonderful idea! It's strange that my magnificent brains didn't think of it first." Just then, with a loud crash, the door to Ozma's suite broke open. In scampered 30 Blorgans intent on conquest. The Scarecrow smiled, and with a little flick of the wrist, the magic fan had done its work. All the Blorgans were swept screaming and cursing from the room. The door swung shut behind them. With the orange smoke gone, the Wizard and the Cowardly Lion awoke. "What happened?" asked the Wizard. He got up groggily from where he had fallen on the floor. The Cowardly Lion opened his eyes to see the Wizard standing and the Scarecrow next to him with the fan in his hand. From what the Cowardly Lion and the Scarecrow told him, and from what he already knew of the orange smoke, the Wizard was able to figure out what had occurred. "We haven't a moment to lose!" cried the Wizard. He dashed into the magic room and returned seconds later, his arms full of bottles, jars, a bowl, and the magic belt. He bade the Scarecrow put on the belt and join him on the Cowardly Lion's back. "To the courtyard," he commanded. They only paused a moment to open Ozma's door, and soon all three were heading for the courtyard. The Scarecrow sat directly behind the Cowardly Lion's head, and whenever he saw a Blorgan or its orange smoke, he would wave the fan and blow it away. In this way, they reached the courtyard without mishap. The Wizard dismounted and started making strange, cryptic passes in the air and mumbling magic phrases. He set the bowl on the Cowardly Lion's head. "For want of a tripod," he said. He poured equal portions of powder from each of the bottles and jars that had been brought down from the magic room. The Cowardly Lion shivered when the Wizard lit a match. "Don't worry," Cowardly Lion reassured the Wizard. "I wouldn't singe a hair of your head for all the gold in the Gnome Kingdom." "Unless it was for a good cause," he added, dropping the match into the powder. When the flame touched the multicolored powders, they exploded into a beautiful fireworks display. The Scarecrow stepped behind the Wizard to keep any sparks from landing on his crisp, dry straw and setting it aflame. The Cowardly Lion closed his eyes tightly and wished his fur wasn't so near the fire. "Will all the Blorgans in the Emerald City and the rest of the land of Oz gather before us in the courtyard?" said the wizard in a voice just above a whisper. And here is the illustration of the wizard and all the fireworks coming out of the bowl on the Cowardly Lion's head. A pretty green smoke now billowed from the bowl. Great clouds of the green smoke enveloped the city. When the air was thickly filled with green smoke, the wizard waved his hand. With a sudden rush and swoosh, the air was clear. Meanwhile, the Blorgans were coming from all parts of the city. Soon they were jammed petal to petal in the large courtyard. They'd all stopped emitting the orange smoke, and they appeared powerless to attack our friends. Although the Blorgans could neither give off their orange smoke nor attack, they could still talk. And they talked. They shouted and screamed and muttered and threatened and growled and made all manner of disturbing noises. The Cowardly Lion shivered under the wizard's magic powder bowl. Once he was sure all the Blorgans were gathered before them, the wizard whispered something in the Scarecrow's ear. The Scarecrow's smile widened and he nodded vigorously. Clutching the magic belt tightly with both hands, the Scarecrow took one step toward the mass of Blorgan invaders. He closed his eyes and did as the wizard had told him. When he opened his eyes, the Blorgans had disappeared. "It worked!" he shouted happily. "Look, Cowie, look, it worked, it worked!" The Cowardly Lion opened his eyes and looked at the empty courtyard. "They're gone," he said. "Wow," said Dorothy. "Did that really happen to you?" She leaned over and looked at the Cowardly Lion's face. "Thanks to you, the Emerald City and the Land of Oz were saved from these Blorgan creatures." The Cowardly Lion avoided her proud looks and murmured, "Didn't do nothing. You would have done the same thing." "Oh, come on, Lion," said the wizard. "You're a hero. Now act like one." "How does a hero act?" asked the lion. "Well, he's supposed to bow and smile and say, 'Shucks, it was nothing.' And tell his story everywhere," said the Scarecrow. He then demonstrated the bowing and smiling, but quite unexpectedly, during a bow, he lost his balance and flipped over on his back. Dorothy, the wizard, and the Cowardly Lion all laughed. The Scarecrow joined in too, when he discovered himself in the middle of a path with one leg draped over his shoulder and the other stretched out behind him. "By just looking around, one would never know we had been invaded yesterday," said Dorothy, looking at the carefully landscaped gardens. "They all look as pretty as they always have." The wizard agreed. "One other thing," she said, turning to face her magical friend. "What did you tell the Scarecrow to say?" "I'll answer that," said the Scarecrow, regaining his balance. "I said, 'I wish all the Blorgans would return to their home under the mountain of the Fanfathoms and go to sleep for 100 years. Now you can ask the wizard why. When he started to walk away, one leg collapsed and he fell." The wizard cleared his throat. "I discovered from the powder that I burned on our friend the Cowardly Lion's head that these creatures live underneath the mountain of the Phanphasms. I had the Scarecrow wish them to sleep for 100 years because I had a plan that would stop them from being so evil. This morning I sent Herbie to their cavern under the mountain with a supply of happiness vine seeds. When he finished planting them, he will ride back to Oz on one of their flying vines. The happiness vines should be well established by the time the Blorgans awaken, so the happiness berries should be the first things they eat. Once they partake of the berries, they'll never try to make happy people unhappy ever again." "Why didn't they try to conquer Oz before?" asked Dorothy. "Because until a few days ago they had been under a magic spell cast by Nellabelle, a fairy of Queen Lurline's band. Apparently Nellabelle discovered the Blorgans' desire to make people unhappy, so she put them to sleep for 1,000 years, thinking that was long enough for them to straighten out. Unfortunately, when they awoke, they were as bad as ever, and planned an attack on Oz, the world's happiest country. The wizard smiled. But they won't bother us anymore. Whatever happened to the courage pills? Asked the Scarecrow. He gingerly untwisted the leg that hung over his shoulder so it wouldn't lose any of its stuffing. Herbie has them, answered the wizard. He renamed them energy pills. I don't need them anymore, said the Cowardly Lion. I'm braver than anybody in Oz. Why, I'd like to see someone try to scare me. I'd like to... Nick, Nick, the Scarecrow joyfully cried. Nick Chopper, the Tin Woodman, was striding along the garden path. Ah, he said, Ozma told me I would find you here. It's almost time for the big luncheon. I brought some flowers for you, Dorothy. The Cowardly Lion glanced at his old friend. Ah! He shrieked. He jumped up and ran for the palace as fast as he could. Blorgans, rose things, monsters, help! Every lion for himself, run for the hills! Help! What did I do? Asked the Tin Woodman. An amused little smile crossed the wizard's face as Dorothy accepted the bouquet of red and white roses. Thank you, Nick. Don't worry about the Cowardly Lion. It wasn't your fault. He was just, well, you'll hear all about what's been happening in the Emerald City here at the luncheon. It's pretty exciting. Come on, wizard, let's go before the Cowardly Lion tells the whole story by himself. She offered her arm. Arm in arm, the wizard, Dorothy, the Tin Woodman, and the Scarecrow went to join the rest of the Oz celebrities at the luncheon. And here's the final illustration. We have the poor Scarecrow getting scared by a bouquet of roses. And the illustrations are courtesy of my brother, David Lee Ingersoll. So thank you to him, and thank you for listening.